Billy Coen was a second lieutenant turned death row inmate who starred as one of the primary protagonists in Resident Evil Zero, whilst travelling the extremely dangerous Arklay Mountains en route to the Ragaton base for his execution. A pack of Cerberus sent the transportation vehicle off-road nearing Raccoon City suburbs, causing a crash and the death of nearly everyone on board. Luckily for him, he was able to make his way to the Ecliptic Express, where the events of RE0 later unfold, avoiding a similar fate to those at the crash site. With a series of subsequent deaths and missing persons reports in the mountains, STAR's Bravo team arrived a few hours later. Under false accusation, they spread out nearby in search for him. After experiencing the deaths of her friends and almost falling victim to the leeches, Rebecca Chambers finds herself in a predicament when she's forced to team up with Billy. With unique abilities, strengths, and weaknesses, they form a companionship that facilitates their survival. At the end of the game, however, Rebecca and Billy make their separate ways. Not even a cheeky kiss. Rebecca commandeers Billy's dog tag as proof of his death, and she heads off for the Spencer mansion just in time for the next game. Billy says one last thank you before turning in the opposite direction, back into the forest. This is unfortunately the last time we ever see or hear about Billy again, without a single note, line of dialogue, or reference in any other game. Of course, this mystery has sparked numerous debate and speculation spanning across 20 plus years as to his whereabouts, whether or not he even made it out of the forest, as well as many other questions that I hope to answer in this video. I'm going to do a deep dive into each and every theory to ultimately find closure on one of my favourite characters in the series, as well as the most notorious mystery that I've ever covered on my channel. The disappearance of Billy Coen is a mystery shrouded in immense speculation and supposition, a product of an everlasting question met with a lack of information spanning across 2 decades, appearing in some forms of media herself, including the preceding mainline title chronologically. Rebecca doesn't recollect her accounts of RE0's story in RE1 for obvious reasons. It's about as cold a case could possibly be, and with full creative freedom to draw my own conclusions, it's somewhat of a personal favourite of mine. The following 3 theories are what I consider to be the most likely outcomes when discussing Billy's fate after RE0, with a lot of sub-theories in between to merit their respective cases. We are going to start from the very beginning, assuming he never did make it out of the Arklay Mountains by himself. A depressing theory that's shared amongst the community is that Billy simply fell victim to Umbrella's bioweapons while traversing the Arklay Mountains in search of shelter. A theory that declares the extreme conditions of Raccoon City suburbs and questions Billy's capacity to have survived such a demanding task. Honestly, if this were real life, this theory would be the most accepted given the lack of information. And for the reasons that I'm about to highlight here, I think it's very reasonable to believe. A YouTuber by the name of T-Type brought up the strongest point in relation to this theory. Billy wasn't well armed nor protected during RE0's final cutscene, making his hike through the forest more detrimental than it needed to be. When we take into account the deaths of entire squads of Special Forces agents, STAR's Bravo team and Alpha team, Billy's chances of survival were limited from the moment he split up with Rebecca. Speaking of which, deceased members of STAR's Alpha team could have also come into contact with Billy around this time. Like Bravo team, they would have been hunting for him momentarily upon arrival. Outside of Rebecca, Enrico, and Richard, all of Bravo team were easily eliminated by BOWs in the forest. They were all very well armed and trained in combat experience, more so than Billy. Also, in RE1's intro scene, it took the sacrifices of multiple other members, the teamwork of Wesker, Jill, Chris, and Barry, and the emergency refuge of the Spencer mansion just to narrowly avoid Alpha team's complete eradication. So I suppose we need to ask ourselves the question, would Billy have survived this on his own? Possibly, but we'll get to the evidence in support of Billy's survival in another topic. The other thing that's suspicious about Billy, a trait that's persistent with his character throughout the game, and Rebecca to an extent, is his naiveness regarding the magnitude of Umbrella's bioweapons, specifically the fact that James Marks' contamination of both the forest and Spencer mansion continued long after the events of RE0. This may just be pseudoscience for a lot of people, however I like to use psychology when there's nothing of interest to form a conclusive answer. His language at at the end of the game comes from a place of closure and self-relief. We see him lying down at the top of the cliff, and he uses a phrase that someone in danger should never use.
Officially, Lieutenant Billy Coen is dead.
Yeah, I'm just a zombie now.
I understand if this is supposed to be the finale and the characters were taking the opportunity to say their goodbyes, but it's clear that both of them thought that the whole ordeal was over when it was anything but. The outbreak was still very new at this point, and instances of unawareness are evident as early as the train.
The forest is full of zombies and monsters.
Zombies and monsters.
It's gonna be dangerous from here on in. Why don't we cooperate?
Cooperate with you?
Listen, little girl, if you haven't noticed, there's some pretty freaked out things on this train. And I, for one, want to get out of here. I don't think we stand a chance doing it alone.
It's almost definitely more dangerous outside the train than inside, but because Billy never stayed in the forest for long, he didn't know any better. He thought that killing James Marcus would mark the end of this nightmare, when in reality, all he did was find himself back where he started, in the middle of the Arklay Mountains, without shelter, without Rebecca to help him when needed. A sentence from the official novelization, Resident Evil 0 Hour, Chapter 17, demonstrates this observation in text while giving us more substance about Billy's mentality and his direction that I'll talk about later on in the video. He watched her until she disappeared, lost to the shadows of the woods, then turned, looking for a path of his own. He decided that south sounded pretty good and started walking, enjoying the warm sun on his shoulders, the song of the birds in the trees. I don't really need to clarify why this is narrating someone who doesn't know the situation they're in. Billy is suddenly incautious, indecisive, and carefree. This is how I'd act if I got lost in a public park. Evidently, Billy's main priority was escaping captivity, and Rebecca resolved this when she promised to report his death to the military. In general, Billy relied on Rebecca a lot, needing her help on several occasions and exhibiting signs of recklessness that wouldn't correlate well with a lone hike through the forest. Perhaps the most dangerous weakness of Billy is that he couldn't treat a serious injury. Unlike every protagonist in the series, he cannot combine herbs, meaning his military medical training obviously isn't on the same level as STAR's when it comes to BOW related injuries. To sum this theory up, I think it's a bulletproof conclusion. If this were a real life case, Billy would have been declared dead with or without Rebecca's report. Every character in the game has a partner or some kind of external support to guide them through their mission. Even Leon, who is an extremely well-trained special agent, still needed Hunnigan, Ada, Ashley, and Lewis's help to stay alive. I can almost say with certainty that Billy probably did die after RE0's final scene, but maybe he didn't. What if something else happened to him? What if someone else had a say in all of this?
Listen, you gotta get out of there.
What are you talking about?
I don't have time to explain. You gotta get out of there right now.
All right, let me grab my...
The Billy Nemesis theory is iconic when discussing anything Resident Evil. Once again, this question has remained unanswered for ages, and I think we need to try and prove or disprove this possibility entirely. A Nemesis T-type is the evolution of other T-virus mutations. Specifically, the Proto-Tyrant and Tyrant that we fight in RE0 and RE1 respectively are the byproducts of human experimentation, as seen in the laboratory for instance, a disgustingly painful and dangerous procedure that often doesn't go as planned. For comparison, take the Regenerators and the more evolved Iron Maidens as a reference. The case for Billy's transfusion is that he was apprehended by Umbrella while on the run, presumably by escaping to Raccoon City before being recognized, or maybe he was kidnapped in the woods by Wesker. The evidence for this is also minimal, although there's lots of small things that help establish this theory as more concrete. Wesker spies on Billy on multiple occasions via security cameras, first taking place as he enters the training facility. Wesker is initially cut off before elaborating on Billy's appearance.
What about the mail?
I'm unfamiliar with
Attention.
At this point in the story, Wesker was going to any means necessary to cover up any information regarding the outbreaks, so Billy's infiltration of these areas didn't go over well with him. I don't think he would have let Billy off the hook like this, and the fact that Wesker doesn't bring up Billy ever again speaks volumes as to his intentions around this time. In addition to his valuable combat experience, his knowledge of the outbreak and Umbrella's research, and that Billy was a wanted felon, later declared dead, essentially removing him from the public record indefinitely, Wesker could have easily taken this opportunity to take Billy and force him to undergo the Nemesis trial without consequences. Waiting for Rebecca to show up at the Spencer mansion could have greenlit a search, as he knew via the security footage that they were together, and that Billy couldn't show his face around other STARS members, even going as far as to destroy the train at the beginning of the game.
That's irrelevant. We must make sure no knowledge of this gets out. Destroy the train. Completely.
It's clear that Billy had bigger things to worry about. In RE2, we find a picture of Rebecca that Wesker keeps under his desk. Needless to say, he had a crush on her, at least in his younger days. Being the quiet and mysterious guy that he is, he didn't confess, but instead chose to keep her picture at his workplace, spies on her multiple times in RE0 and most likely off camera as well. My point is that seeing Billy so cordial with Rebecca could have made him very jealous. Further validating his motive to kill him, he's definitely the type of guy to do this. Billy announces a disliking to STARS in one occasion near the start of the game, during his first altercation with Rebecca. It's very spiteful and translates immediately when applied to the creature that he could have became.
Oh, I see. You're with STARS. Well, no offense, honey, but your kind doesn't seem to want me around, so I'm afraid our little chat time is over.
Wesker was still very much playing into his false persona as STARS Alpha Team's leader, so if he were to approach Billy under the premise of a better life before betraying him, his hatred for STARS would have become so visceral to the point of wanting to kill every other member, as we see in RE3 with Jill. The circumstances around Wesker and Billy are very weird, but it's still very possible that none of this ever happened. Or at least, if Wesker went out of his way to confront Billy, it would have been to remove a witness, a distraction as he puts it in RE4. And nothing more.
If you do happen to encounter him, put him out of commission. We can't let him interfere with our plans.
He has no idea what's going on. He's nothing we need to worry about.
He's a survivor of Raccoon City. We can do without the extra distraction. Take him out.
I'm going off of a YouTube comment here, which is never a good sign, but someone said that the comic adaptation consisting of RE2 and RE3's tied-in story revealed that Nemesis was a former boxer who was confronted by Umbrella and blackmailed into accepting the Nemesis program. Although I said that Billy could have been blackmailed by Wesker, and this record was Umbrella's lie to cover up what really happened, Billy isn't dumb enough to fall for this. If he was approached by Wesker or Birkin in the woods, he would have died before willingly going with them, in which case he wouldn't have been fit for experimentation. And as strong as Wesker is, even he almost died in the forest with the rest of Alpha Team. He didn't infect himself with the T-virus until the last day of the mansion incident. He's only human, and he would have died walking around the Arklay Mountains in search of someone of little importance. It wasn't as if Billy could report Wesker to the police. No, I do think it's possible that Wesker sent a team out to hunt Billy down just to kill him, but even this is unlikely. I don't think the Nemesis theory is what we are looking for, so we have to go on to my third and final theory before giving my final conclusion at the very end. As mentioned earlier, the following points are in support of Billy's survival and potential escape from Raccoon City suburbs. We'll quickly go over these before trying to find his location. The end of RE0 takes place in the morning. Referring back to the novelization, as well as the setting in-game, Billy couldn't have chose a better time to escape the forest. Although wild dogs aren't necessarily nocturnal, all of the Cerberus and wolves in the series are only seen at night to the best of my knowledge. The Cerberus dog breed are officially confirmed as Dobermans, initially used as police dogs by the Raccoon City Police Department, before being repurposed as subject for Umbrella's earliest T-virus experiments in the 1980s for military service, escaping from the Spencer Mansion's courtyard due to the outbreak, leading to a scourge of deaths in the area. Active Dobermans aren't nocturnal, but they do sleep on average 16 hours a day. Considering the T-virus mutation and behaviour of these dogs, it's either a lot more or a lot less. I couldn't find anything regarding the T-virus and its ability to negate sleep in successful subjects. but I think that Billy had a pretty good chance to make the trip unnoticed. The geographical location of Raccoon City has been debated and theorized for a long time. All we know for sure is that it's a Midwestern town in America. However, it's generally believed that Raccoon City is based off of Springfield, Missouri. Some people have graciously taken the time to match these two regions together, and I think it's a great place to start. As we know, Billy headed south from the Spencer Mansion at the end of the game. With many maps of Raccoon City to help us, we can start to create a route that he may have taken. That's assuming they're north-south maps, of course, which they are. Thankfully, this one here has a compass at the bottom right, confirming an accurate depiction of Billy's path through the Arklay Mountains. Okay, so on the map, the Spencer Mansion faces opposite from the hill that Billy and Rebecca split up. Judging by the final cutscene, this hill should be about 400 meters north from the Spencer Mansion. So from here, Billy initially headed north down the hill, circled the mountain from either side, most likely the western side since southeast would lead him straight into the Spencer Mansion, and proceeded to head south from this point onwards. Heading in this direction, his first hurdle would have been the small river. He would have followed it to the Spencer Estates Road to cross over this, which is no problem. Next, he would have come across his first main road. Choosing to stay nearby the road for a sense of direction, he would have never strayed from it at any point after finding it. Next, he would have travelled southeast, heading into this intersection. Staying south, of course, this road eventually led him to the Raccoon City Waste Disposal Factory, a perpendicular road causing a stake in his plan. Now, it's obvious to me, judging by the language of the novel, that heading south was never a long-term goal for him. I don't know why people are fixated on Billy's decision to head south, to the extent where he would have entered another state. It was clearly an impulsive decision to not be taken too seriously. With no motive or goal in mind, why would he end up in Arkansas or Louisiana of all places? Billy would have been an absolute idiot to even consider travelling through Raccoon City, take any form of public transport or hitchhike. At this point in his journey, Rebecca would have just entered the Spencer Mansion and wouldn't have declared his death until much later. Regardless, Billy would have been easily recognised in a populated town, leading to his subsequent arrest and execution, a risk that he would never take in a million years. With access to clean river water, his survival knife still on him, a 15-mile hike through the Mornin countryside isn't an emergency unless he was injured, and even then I don't think he would have showed his face in a hospital without identification. The transportation vehicle leading to the Ragathon base was also en route through Raccoon City before it crashed. The local police could have been informed about this, using wanted posters as anticipation in case he ever did enter the city. From this road here, I can say with confidence that he gave up on going south, opting to follow the road east instead. Unfortunately, we can't see anything beyond this, but Billy would have kept heading east from this point, to stay as far away from populated areas as possible, following the street as long as he could, using the noise of the cars to his advantage to ward off the dogs, leading to smaller towns or gas stations where he could safely stock up on resources, and to stop any chances of getting lost. Abandoning this road to persevere on heading south would have also revealed a large lake, a probable breeding ground for Cerberus where many of them can accumulate while drinking. If he didn't cut his losses here and just went back, further south even, and he'd encounter the train station, potentially the most communal setting in all of Raccoon City. Like, why would he do this? Assuming that Raccoon City is a real location, and that the Spencer Mansion is 15 miles north from here, in an effort to find Billy's body, I would send a small search party within a mile radius of this main road heading east into St. Louis, and then within this small circle of the Spencer Mansion as a last resort. Branching roads leading into smaller towns would also be points of interest. As for Billy's location had he survived this, I wouldn't know. Too much time has passed since the events of RE0, and with minimal evidence I wouldn't know where to start, but I do think that Illinois is way more likely than Arkansas or Louisiana. There's still many small theories that I find amazing, particularly the one that Billy became Hunk to hide his identity, but I'd like to save something like that for a Hunk origin story. My final conclusion is that Billy died on the eastern side of the Arklay Mountains, as sad as that seems. I wish I could give a supernatural answer like what I normally do, but I'll leave that to the comment section as always. Billy is the dog. Overall, I find this topic to be one of Resident Evil's most iconic, and RE0 remains as my second favourite game, behind RE4 of course. I don't know why this game gets so much hate, it's literally incredible. Billy may never come back as a playable character, but he'll always be up there with the dog as two of my favourite characters also. Thanks for watching.